Hello and welcome back to Commercial Radio. So today what we're doing is we'll be continuing with airtime and we'll be looking at interviews specifically today. Most radio presenters think that they know how to conduct an interview, and I'm sure they know how to bring out the questions in it. But what we're going to be doing is looking at the correct ways versus the wrong ways of doing interviews, just looking at the admin side of doing an interview, what you need to know. Okay, and then we're going to look at a couple of examples. But before we do that, just to recap about what we did in lecture 12. So lecture 12, we spoke about sponsorships and branded content, okay? And in the lesson prior to that, we also spoke about sponsorships. With regards to the sponsorships and the branded content, we said that sponsorships link brands to content that already exists, versus branded content that creates content from scratch for a specific campaign for a set duration, okay? We mentioned that sponsorships are usually much more affordable because the content is already being produced, so it's not brand new content. So that's the difference between sponsorship and branded content. With regards to sponsorships though, specifically, sponsorships can be broken into two different categories. So firstly, it'll be mandatory indicators, and secondly, features. So what would fall under mandatory indicators, if you think about that? Mandatory indicators will be the things that are mandatory for a radio station to do. So it's mandatory for them to deliver the news, the traffic, sport, weather, financial indicators, okay? So as a brand, you can tap into any of these elements for sponsorship. In essence, what you're doing then is, it's like taking an existing product and pasting a different brand over its packaging so that the consumer associate the brand with that product, okay? And then here you can get how the structure would normally work for a mandatory indicator sponsorship is you would have a 10-second opening billboard at the start, okay, so before the actual segment. Then you would have, let's say it's your news, so you'd have a 10-second opening billboard before your news, then you'd have a 10-second closing billboard straight after your news. Then you would have either a 30-second generic spot, okay, do you remember what that is? That is a recorded ad. Or you would have a 30-second live read playing right after the news. That would form part of the brand. Okay, so this is part of what the advertiser is paying for. And with regards to the opening and the closing billboards, they can either be read by the presenter, so as a live read, or they will be pre-recorded and played then before and after, again, the news in this case. So why do we do this? Because it creates an association with the brand that can improve recognition, credibility, and trust for that brand. So that was indicators. And then features. Features are a benchmark for engagement in most radio shows. You as a listener will know what sort of content to expect at a particular time and anticipate the content. Think about your favorite feature. You know when it's coming up. You know what time to tune in to listen to your feature. Features can be accompanied by either a jingle or a key introductory piece that signals the start of this content. Features have become key commodities for brands as they are viewed as a direct line of communication with the listener. Sponsorships of features must be treated carefully and creatively. It's not quite the same as sponsoring a mandatory indicator. When it comes to sponsoring a feature, there needs to be some sort of an alignment between the content in the feature and the brand that is sponsoring it. Why do I say that? Because if there's a natural alignment between the two, the commercial message will seem less blatant and less in your face, meaning that you as a listener might be more open to it. A brand has to commit to a long-term sponsorship. So sponsoring a feature for a day or even for a week will have very little impact for you as a brand. It takes time and consistency to build an association with the brand. So radio stations would typically suggest that a feature have a minimum sponsorship time. So normally from about 6 weeks up until a year. So you can literally sponsor that specific feature for a whole year. In doing this, the station is protected from being perceived as fickle and disloyal to sponsors and to ensure that sponsors will commit to a set period. So again, features and mandatory indicators fall under sponsorship, okay? So you can sponsor a mandatory indicator like the traffic, the news, the sport, the weather, the financial indicators, or you can sponsor a feature. And then the other part of that is branded content, okay? So this is where content still needs to be created and where this is done along with the brand. So the brand co-creates this content. This content will be bespoke because it's created for a specific reason, okay? So between the radio station and the client, and they're either their creative or their media agencies. Brand content allows brands to create stories that are compelling and that intertwine with their message. Now from branded content and sponsorships, we move to interviews, which is another form of airtime that a client can book. If you open your textbook on page 342, you'll see that's where interviews are up until page 344. So again, it's not a lot of content, but it's a lot to take in and it's important. I'm sure you must have heard a lot of interviews in your life. Think about good ones and bad ones that you've heard and what differentiated the one from the other. What made the bad one bad for you and what is it that made the good one stand out for you as a good interview? Interviews allow listeners to participate in seemingly personal conversations. These are often conducted based on the relevance, popularity, or the newsworthiness of the person that is being interviewed, okay? The discretion of who to interview typically lies with the show's content producer in conjunction with the broader team. And these interviews will normally be pre-approved by the program manager, okay? So a program manager is very involved when it comes to interviews. The reason for these additional levels of approval for interviews specifically is because there are often instances in which advertisers request interviews with their senior executives. Someone, for instance, like the chief marketing officers might form part of the interview. This means that radio stations must navigate a fine line between editorial and commercial content. Interviews form a critical part of core programming and content. So it's important for stations to separate commercial interviews from core programming ones, okay? So there is a difference between the two. Interview pricing is seldom found on a rate card. It's not often that you'll pick up a rate card and the interview prices will simply be there, okay? Especially when it comes to commercial radio stations. The reason for this is because these interviews can't simply be purchased without these various levels of approval, okay? So without your program manager's involvement. In order to protect the integrity of the on-air output, interviews are a topic that is navigated by the sales and programming teams, okay? So programming and sales work together when it comes to doing an interview. If a radio station grants the time for a commercial interview, it is generally because it fits in with the constraints that define when an interview would be allowed, or it forms part of a bigger commercial campaign. The program manager and producer of the show will look at angles from which this interview can be framed so that they can still create entertaining and engaging content for the listener, because remember, that's what it's about for them. It's about entertaining and engaging with their audience, but they still need to convey the marketing message on the other side. Interviews can be used to launch campaigns, convey necessary information to the public, or explain a partnership between a station and a brand. Alternatively, it can also be used as a campaign conclusion to highlight the work that was achieved and to extend thanks to the audience for participating. So a good example here would be a big competition where there might have been one overall winner. So at the end of it, you might, let's say it's a bank that gave away a bursary. At the end of the campaign, when the winner has been announced, there will probably be an interview with the winner along with someone from the bank who will give their input into why they did this, how they feel about it, how the winner feels about it, just putting the brand's message out there once again, and bringing in that positivity, okay, of the brand being associated with the station. So positive brand awareness. It could also be for positive brand awareness at the start of your campaign, explaining why you're doing this campaign, what it is that you want from the campaign at the end of the day, what you're trying to achieve, your objectives, in other words, etc. An interview can sometimes be scheduled in the middle of a campaign to provide a new piece of information or highlight a limited offer progress on the campaign goal, or provide insight or advice regarding something that the station may have learned during the campaign. For example, if an insurance company runs a campaign where people can win discounted premiums if they sign up for a certain policy during the campaign period, it may be necessary for an insurance representative to explain how their premiums work and what the policy entails, rather than a presenter doing it, okay? Because that person will understand the details a lot better than a presenter will when a presenter is being briefed. And this can then be very helpful to the audience and drive better engagement, and it may answer some questions that you as a listener might have had. The program manager and producer must then try to make sure that the interview candidate is engaging, knowledgeable, and relevant, as well as pre-script interview questions in order to cover all of the elements they believe the audience would wish to know. In the case of integrated campaigns, where an interview may be scheduled in the middle of a campaign, the program manager and the producer may also analyze their digital media and social media platforms in order to gain insight into what questions listeners might have about the campaign. It happens frequently that interviews will be held in the middle of campaigns, especially, let's say it's, for instance, if you think about Castle Light, who always brings over these artists to South Africa, when they start selling their tickets and they're advertising that the ticket sales as part of a campaign, somewhere along the line, they will have interviews with their artists, perhaps with the other artists who are also taking part, who also form part, etc. Okay, so those will mainly take place in the middle, so not at the start. While a client may view an interview as an excellent piece of consider when agreeing to an interview, and these are as follows. So the first thing that the client needs to remember is to be aware of your audience, okay? To make sure the information is relevant, to use suitable language, and to give examples to explain, okay? Because again, radio is about theater of the mind. If you explain, if you give examples, it's easier for people to understand what you are saying. You need to be succinct, so keep the message brief and clear. Get the listeners to feel a connection, okay? So focus on listeners. Focus on how listeners should feel about the brand. Consider how to make them feel that way. Don't just rely on the brand's existing reputation. So there needs to be a connection. Be open to difficult questions. The brand must appear to be open and honest. Consider inviting live listeners to ask questions. Use an approach that resonates with the listeners. So consider who the target audience are, okay? Consider them, consider the tone of the station, and consider your existing listener base. So these are all things that you need to take into consideration before simply putting an interview on air. What we're going to do now is look at a few YouTube videos, okay, as examples. The first one I'm going to show you is an example of how not to conduct an interview, okay? So how a guest should not be interviewed in studio. And this was a really big interview on MSNBC, so really big news station. It was an interview that was conducted with Russell Brand when he was doing his world tour. So let's have a look.
All right, joining us now, he's a really big deal. I know. I'm told this. I'm not very pop cultured. I'm sorry. Comedian, movie star, author, and host of the show Brand X, Russell Brand. This summer, he's embarking on his first ever worldwide comedy tour, The Messiah Complex. Katty Kay and Brian Shackman are here as well, and he already told Brian that he might want to disrobe. I'm just saying.
I just thought maybe I could loosen up a little, show a little more chest hair, and he said maybe I should do a little more.
I only think Russell can do that. You look fantastic.
Yeah. That is a very kind compliment. You also look beautiful. Brian, you are free to wear whatever you want. This is one of your freedoms that is afforded to you.
I appreciate that.
Uh-oh. Silver boots. The boots are
I want to see them. Come on. Put them on the table.
Kinky boots time.
Wow.
There are some boots.
Those are nice. Put your feet up, relax.
I wouldn't do that. I don't want to disrespect your program.
Okay, no.
You did ask to see.
No, I did, and I liked
a fellow English woman, so
and we
I feel
we
obliged.
talked about kinky boots recently. So
yes, it's a fantastic show. You have to go. Okay, Russell. Ooh,
sorry about that.
That's all right.
You just disrespected the table.
Giant Jenga. It's like your desk is a puzzle.
It is. I'm sorry about that.
What is the solution?
I think we could try to pull it back in. So
there you go, love. Be careful because that's a low-cut dress.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
I'm only flesh and blood. I've got instincts.
Oh, okay. Well,
tell me what you need to know.
I'm just going to have a drink here. Katty Kay, question.
Messiah Complex. That's the name of your tour?
Yes.
Do you have one?
No. It's mental illness.
Right. And you don't have that either?
I hope that I'm here as a fully qualified professional gentleman.
None of us are.
Free from mental illness.
Free from it.
None of you. This is a hotbed of neurosis and psychosis.
Yes.
Oh, my word, I'm grateful to be here.
Yeah.
But Joe's not here, so there are no messiahs.
That's true. Although we actually bring more mental illness to the table than we admit, at least on this side here, for sure.
On this side.
So tell me about the tour. You're starting in Abu Dhabi. Is that where it began?
Yeah, it's in a lot of Middle Eastern nations and South Africa and all across Europe, and of course in your wonderful country and in our country. I'm very, it's a really good tour. I'm talking about Malcolm X, Che Guevara, Gandhi, and Jesus Christ, and how these figures are significant culturally, and how icons are appropriated and used to designate consciousness and meaning, particularly posthumously.
And what brings all those people together?
They're all people that died for a cause. They're all people whose icons are used to designate meaning, perhaps not in the manner in which they intended.
I kind of like that. That sounds dead serious.
Yeah, it's funny when you do it as a joke. I'm taking it seriously. I'm just going to do it on stage.
Can't we get 30 seconds now?
Well, not really, love. I mean,
Gandhi,
this is
go.
work. Gandhi, go.
Gandhi, go.
I hope that's not your message to Gandhi and the people of India.
No, it's funny though, because I travel a lot. And
all these people are at work, are they?
Yeah, they're working.
They're just at work.
Well, no.
Work more quietly.
They're Facebooking, actually.
What are they doing?
Facebooking.
Yeah. They're Facebooking?
Yeah.
Shopping.
I bet they can't look at pornography. I bet it's blocked on their website, huh?
I don't know.
Pretty focused. But they're allowed to look at, if they wanted to, they can tweet, they can Facebook.
Yeah?
They have to. That's part of
They're
their
probably
job.
tweeting right now.
They're tweeting themselves senseless back there.
Yeah.
Lovely. That's to create the atmosphere of we're a hotbed of news.
It's a working news. Yeah.
They're actually actors.
They're all fully qualified actors.
Yeah.
They're all just now looking for acting work.
So people, you have a pretty broad range here. I'm going to ask a serious question. Can I try? I'll try.
Try. It's never
Okay,
good.
I'll try.
Go ahead.
Everyone asks, what do you like better, TV, movies, or stand-up? Which one's more difficult? I mean, going on stage, I think, is probably pretty tough. A movie can be boring because you shoot a thing 100 times. TV is what it is.
There are challenges in all of those different disciplines. The thing I enjoy most is stand-up comedy because you're direct with your audience. You can't be misinterpreted. People can't get confused. You know what happens if you work in media? People like to change the information so that it suits a particular agenda. If you're in a room with people, then what you're saying is clear. If you say something that people are confused about, you can explain it to them then. If you say something as a joke, people can't pretend that you're saying it seriously. So I like having direct communication with people because I believe people are very, very intelligent, but the information gets manipulated a lot and people like to cause fake stirs and stuff.
Funny, the accent, when I see him in person, it's totally fine. Forgetting Sarah Marshall or the TV show, it's fine. But on satellite radio in the car, I can't understand a single joke you say.
You can't understand it.
Can you
I can't.
understand me?
Yes, but I'm telling you, when I'm driving in the car and everyone's laughing in the audience of the radio, I'm like, I have no idea what he's
It's
saying.
best you focus on your driving, Brian. You're a man, you don't want to be distracted by humour. You might crash into a pedestrian.
Okay. So it's a good thing.
I think it's probably for the best.
I think this is my first
Brand experience.
yeah. I think it's not listening to him, it's experience. It's just sort of taking it all in.
You are talking about me as if I'm not
transfixed.
here and as if I'm an extraterrestrial. I'm from a country that's
kind of
near
shop
to you.
window dummy. We're just sort of admiring the whole, it's the whole thing.
Well, thank you for your
like
casual
a
objectification.
An experience.
I'm glad that it is
experience.
positive for
It's
you.
very positive, absolutely. Any other questions? Yeah, I'm a little nervous.
You've become nervous.
I
Why are you nervous?
Really? No,
You're a powerful woman. You've got a lovely
yes.
job. What seems to be the trouble?
I don't know.
You've got a hair like Princess Diana.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, I've never.
When she was
No,
alive,
here's-
it wasn't being offensive.
Here's a little subtext.
Yes.
I'm petrified of her, and you
Are
have
you?
her on her
Yeah.
heels.
And she's just moved down the
I
other end.
absolutely love this. Keep
Willie,
going.
What seems to be the trouble, love?
No, I'm good. Well, now we're going to do a bit of therapy. Would you do therapy with Willie Brandt?
With who?
Willie Brandt, would you do therapy with him?
I don't
Because
think
that's where he's heading.
Okay. I'm all right.
Yeah.
You shouldn't say he when a person is present. You should refer to the person by their name. That's basic good
That
manners.
is where Willie is heading.
Who is Willie?
I don't know. Okay, Russell Brand.
Is this what you all do for a living?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm here to. Okay, well, let me help you. I'm here to promote a tour called Messiah Complex. It's here for the people of America. I want the people of America to come and see me do stand-up. Go to russellbrand.tv where you can purchase tickets to see me. These people, I'm sure, are typically very, very good at their job. What is it? You're conveying news to the people of America.
Yes.
People of America, we're going to be okay. Everything's all right. These are your trusted anchors.
Leaning.
Is that news link? Use your papers. I'll shuffle them for you.
Shuffle. Look.
Give us that.
That's good. Pen. You need a pen.
Okay, coming up later. Thank you very much, Kat. Okay, we're going to be talking about the situation with Edward Snowden. This whistleblower, is it good what he's done for America, or are our secrets being jeopardised by his intentions? We're going to be talking about that. Also, Bradley Manning. Is Bradley Manning an American hero, or is he compromising the safety of American troops? We care about your views here on Morning Joe. We'll be talking about those later. Here with me are Brian and Kat. Brian, nice time. What do you think about Edward Snowden? What do you think about the situation with Snowden? Have you got anything to hide? Should we be concerned about the revelations that are occurring?
I don't know what's wrong with you. I understand everything he said.
No, it's because you're looking at him. When you don't see him and you don't see their lips
I
move, it's
understand the
good.
whole thing.
Stop saying he. I'm present. Russell. What's wrong with your manners?
You're good.
Be
at that.
polite.
I'm coming in tomorrow with a big necklace, and I'm opening it
Look
up.
beyond the superficial. That's the problem with current affairs. You forget about what's important. You allow the agenda to be decided by superficial information. What am I saying? What am I talking about? Don't think about what I'm wearing. These things are redundant,
I'm distracted.
superficial.
Okay.
Don't be distracted. What do you think that gesture means, the way you're touching that bottle? What does that indicate? What is that? What's the subtext of
I
that?
think we gotta go to break.
You need to lose that ring, Mika, because it don't mean nothing to you. She's grasping for the shaft. She's a shaft grasper.
Russell, that was free, but it was worth the money.
That was
We'll
great.
buy tickets.
That was
Absolutely.
great. We don't need to see the tour.
I got it now. Russell Brand.
Messiah Complex.
Thank you. The tour Messiah Complex.
Don't be
is-
nervous.
Starts in August in Abu Dhabi, right?
You're ovulating.
Oh, wait, I'm ovulating. Oh my God.
Okay, we're ready. My work is done here.
It comes to the U.S. in August. More Morning Joe in just a moment.
Who is Joe?
He sits right here.
I'm sweating.
Just take that off for a second. So that's the first one I wanted you to see. Did you see what happened there? The presenters literally just lost control at the end of that. Halfway through that interview, they became completely flustered, and Russell Brand was able to simply take over the rest of their show, okay, in essence. So that is an example of what you don't want. You can never lose control of your show, okay? You must remember it's your show at the end of the day. So as much as you're doing prep and everything else prior to doing the interview, when you have the actual interview, you must remember that it's still your show. And if someone is going to ramble on, or if someone is going to go completely off topic, it's your job to bring them back. So the next link that's on your lecture, I want you to go and look at for yourself, okay? Because there's not enough time for me to go through all of these. That specific one looks at 16 of the most controversial celebrity interviews of all time, and it was released now in March 2021, so it's very updated. There's an interview with Vin Diesel where he interrupted a reporter to tell her that she's very sexy in 2016. There's an interview where they call out Katie Couric for asking a transgender model about her private parts on national TV in 2014. And obviously the times that we're in now, with movements like Black Lives Matter and #MeToo and Time's Up, there's a lot more awareness that's been put on interviews about racial and gender inequality and discrimination. So go and have a look at those, okay? What I want to do now is I want to show you a positive one.
Gilbert Harding, have you at last found a way of life which makes you happy and gives you fulfillment?
No.
Gilbert Harding. Richard Nixon.
And I think unless you say it, you're going to be haunted for the rest of your life.
Meg Ryan.
If you were me, what would you do now?
Well, just wrap it up.
Some interviews stand out. The question is, why?
Ready to go.
Yeah.
So I went to interview possibly TV's most famous interviewer.
Pleasure. David, lovely to see you.
Sir David Frost. And within seconds, I had tripped over the lights, and then I ushered Sir David into the wrong chair, the interviewer's chair.
It is. That chair. Can I set you... Sir David, I'll sit you in that one.
Thankfully, I was allowed a retake. This interview business, it's an art.
Sir David, what is the essence of a good interview?
I think the essence of a good interview, in addition to vital things about the interviewer having done his homework and things like that, I think in the end, it's really most of all is to do with the relationship that's established between the interviewer and the interviewee. There are three things.
Sir David's most famous interview, Richard Nixon. He interrogated him for 28 hours and finally got this.
Well, when I said, I just hope I haven't let you down, that said it all. I had. I let down my friends. I let down the country.
So who are the great interviewers, apart from yourself, of course?
I think John Freeman, I mean, he was a great influence on me in that technique, in that concentration.
Have you ever been with a person dying?
John Freeman, the man who took the famous, confident, gruff TV personality Gilbert Harding and revealed him to be miserable, self-loathing, and brought him to tears.
Is that the only time you've seen a person dead?
The only one, yes.
Yes. Let's go right back to your childhood.
I'm sorry.
But not answering can also be revealing.
Did you threaten to overrule him?
One question here 14 times from Jeremy Paxman.
It is not answering the question of whether you threatened to overrule him.
And Meg Ryan didn't have to say anything. You could see her discomfort with Michael Parkinson.
That's not going to be resolved on this show. Is it that moment when you think you've seen a glimpse of the real person?
That's really the test at the end. Whether you think you've got the real person coming through, that you can say, I never thought I'd hear so-and-so say that.
The interview. Simple, but when it's the right people and the right questions, riveting.
It's a pleasure to be interviewed.
David Sillito, BBC News.
All right, so that wasn't a whole interview, obviously. It's just to give you an idea that there are people who do amazing interviews also, okay? And then there's another link on the PowerPoint notes that I also want you to go and look at, which is also more about positive interviews, okay? And the other link that I gave you, it's really quite a nice one, okay? It came out last year. And there are a couple of really good interviews where people in the same industry ask each other or interview each other, okay? Whether it's two rappers, whether it's two producers. There's one where Cardi B is interviewing Bernie Sanders. So go and have a look at that one, okay? And that brings us to your homework for today. What I want you to go and do for homework is I want you to imagine yourself interviewing the CMO of Takealot. What I want you to do is I want you to script 5 questions you think would be entertaining and engaging to the audience about their end-of-year Christmas sale. So script 5 questions you think would be entertaining and engaging to the audience about their end-of-year Christmas sale. So I don't want the normal questions that you see on an everyday basis. The whole idea is to think about yourself as an interviewer and how you would conduct this interview in such a way to actually get people to listen to you, okay? And that brings us to the end of this lesson with regards to interviews. So again, important to realize you do get good interviews and you do get bad interviews, okay? So never lose control while conducting an interview. It's all about what is relevant, what is popular, what's newsworthy, to get the best answers out of your interviewee. And remember those pointers. Be aware of your audience, who it is that will be listening, okay? Use suitable language, be succinct. So keep the message brief and clear. Get the listeners to feel a connection. If you have a connection, they'll also feel a connection. So focus on how the listener should feel about the brand. Consider how to make them feel that way. Okay, be open to difficult questions. Perhaps consider inviting live callers on to ask interviews, and then use an approach that resonates with the listeners. Consider the target audience, consider the tone of the radio station that you're on, and consider the existing listener base. And with that, I say goodbye for now, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.